The villagers called my grandfather the seventh-day ritualist, not because he was born on a Saturday, but because he only performed rituals on Saturdays, exactly at sunset. They said he wasn't like other spirit mediums. He didn't banish ghosts, didn't lift curses, didn't exorcise possessions. He did only one thing. He read the names of the dead and kept them from coming back. I grew up with him in a 3-room wooden house deep in a Cajaput forest, nearly 2 kilometers from the nearest village. No one ever visited. No one ever summoned him to town. Every morning, I helped him clean the altar and wipe down a wooden bowl placed at its center. That bowl was always upside down and was never to be touched. He warned me, "Don't move it. When I die, bury it with me." I was curious once and nearly lifted it, but the moment my fingers brushed its base, I heard breathing, cold, wet, long, as if exhaled from a hole deep underground. I ran. He said nothing, just looked at me with quiet regret. The first time I saw him perform a ritual, I was 12. It was a cold night. The wind howled through the thatched roof. The forest groaned like it was in pain. He told me to sit still and never look directly into the fire. He lit 3 black incense sticks, burned 3 slips of paper, each with a name, and pricked his finger, letting the blood drip into the wooden bowl. As each drop fell, the incense flames flared up with a strange blue hue. Then he began to recite: name, birth year, burial place. After each name, the fire dimmed slightly. When he spoke the final name, the flame extinguished. And from the corner of the room came the sound of footsteps. I didn't turn around, but I could hear every step, heavy and slow, dragging along the ground until it stopped directly behind me. I don't remember if I fainted or fell asleep. When I woke, he had cleaned the blood, put out the incense, and wrapped the ashes in a red cloth. He told me, "Every name is a door. If you don't perform the rite correctly, that door opens both ways." 3 years later, he died. No one from the village came to the funeral. I did as instructed, buried him with the wooden bowl. But that night, I couldn't sleep, because I dreamed of him sitting at the altar, eyes closed, blood running from his nose, and the wooden bowl, its lid removed. From within, a muddy hand was rising, resting gently on his shoulder. I awoke gasping, chest heavy. Outside, rain slammed against the roof, and wind shattered the bamboo awning. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside to secure the panels, only to see a trail of wet footprints, bare feet walking from the front gate to the doorstep. But no footprints going out. I began sleepwalking after that. Villagers said they saw me at 2 a.m. wandering the roads, mumbling names of the dead. Some mornings I'd wake up deep in the forest, my arms covered in scratches. I tried locking myself in, tried tying my hands while I slept. But every time, the ropes were cut. I didn't understand what was happening until one night I dreamed of my grandfather again. He stood in a room filled with smoke. Around him were 7 faceless figures rotating slowly. He didn't speak, just held out his hand, holding the wooden bowl, now cracked open. Inside, there was no blood, only a human eye, clouded in gray, but very much alive and staring straight at me. I asked him, "What's happening to me?" He answered, "The ritual is broken. The knowledge was lost. You're the last one who remembers the names." I woke with a splitting headache. In my hand was a sheet of paper, written in red ink, listing the names of the village dead from the past 40 years. But half of those people were still alive. I went house to house, questioning them. They avoided me, looked at me like I was mad. But every time I mentioned a name from the list, the lights in their homes flickered, mirrors cracked. Some called me late at night, their voices shaking, saying things like, "I was never called. Why do you say I'm dead?" I realized I couldn't run from it. I had to perform the rite. I rebuilt the altar, used my own blood to write each name in order. But by the 7th name, my blood had turned, thick, dark, almost like tar. And each time I finished a name, the back door opened. The wind hissed in, carrying voices I hadn't heard in years. An old teacher, a neighbor, the rice porridge vendor. They stood just behind me. I didn't look. If I turned, they would enter. I read the final name, my own. The fire went out. There was no more sound, only my grandfather's voice, whispering on the wind. "You have called them all. Now guard the door." Van Village sat isolated within a deep valley, 3 sides surrounded by ancient forest, and the 4th bordered by a river that ran red like blood during the monsoon season. The villagers lived quietly, rarely stepping beyond the boundary of thorny bamboo, and never after the brass bell rang at dusk. They called it the rattle bell, for that was when the human cage began to roam. No one knew exactly what the human cage was. Only that, from the days of the village founders, there had always been a ritual, an offering to the cage to preserve the crops and the lives of the people. Every 7 years, on the darkest night of the 7th lunar month, the village would choose one Trungment, a person born under an unlucky star in a cursed hour and day, destined to be pulled into the realm of the dead. That person would be tied into a large bamboo cage and left overnight in the sacred forest. By morning, the cage would be empty. No blood, no corpse, but the trees would grow green again, the rice fields would flourish, the sick would recover, and the village would be safe. The last offering happened when I was 13, and the one chosen was my sister. Her name was Mai. Born at midnight on the last day of the last lunar month, the same night someone in our family died. She was 10 years older than me, always telling ghost stories, carrying me on her back to the fields, soothing me when our mother beat me. But because she loved me, she stepped forward when the village hinted that I might be the offering, due to a strange mark in my left eye. I didn't understand. Only that, during the selection ceremony, she gripped my hand tightly and then let go. She walked to the altar and said, "Let me stay in his place." No one stopped her. Everyone feared the cage. They bound her in a human-sized bamboo trap, lashed with vines strong as iron, and carried her deep into the forest. I remember the rain that night, the wind howling like people crying. I burned with fever and dreamt she was calling me from within the cage. "Lamb, don't let me be alone." At sunrise, the villagers returned to the offering site. The cage was empty. No blood, no sign of struggle. Only a lock of long black hair fluttering in the wind. They said she had been taken cleanly, which meant the cage had accepted her. But ever since, I began dreaming of forests without exits. In my dreams, I wandered through crimson trees, over earth that smelled like rusted iron, always hearing the whine of wind through bamboo. Sometimes I saw figures dart past. Sometimes I saw a bamboo cage lying tangled in roots. And sometimes I saw Mai, sitting beside a cluster of stones, hair hiding her face, weaving something out of red bamboo. When I called her, she'd lift her head. Her face lacked eyes. 10 years later, I left the village, but I never forgot. Then one day, my father died, and I returned. And from the moment I stepped across the thorny border, the dreams returned. The first night back, I dreamt I stood in the forest again, beneath a rotting tree, beside a bamboo cage, twice the size of any I'd seen. It shifted slightly. Someone called my name from inside. When I approached, I saw my own face inside the cage, eyes full of tears, hand reaching out. "You left, but I never got to." I woke in a cold sweat. The next morning, a child in the village disappeared. A boy named Min, 7 years old. No signs, no sounds. His mother collapsed screaming. It had been exactly 7 years since the last offering. I went to ask Old Man Lu, the keeper of the village altar. He shook his head. "The cage is stirring again, but this time it's different." That night, I didn't sleep because I saw the cage outside my front gate, empty, but wet, as if someone had just been inside. Next to it, a scrap of paper smeared in charcoal read, "Don't run." I screamed. Neighbors came, but no one else saw the cage or the note. Only me. The following night, I dreamt of the ritual again, but this time, I was bound inside the cage, and Mai stood outside holding an axe. I cried out, but she only whispered, "You don't get to leave again. This time, you stay." I woke to a pillow soaked in blood from a nosebleed. The mirror had cracked, and in the shattered glass, I saw the cage swaying gently behind me. I decided to return to the original offering site. Following only memory, I ventured alone into the forest. When I arrived, I found a mound of earth. Atop it sat 7 old bamboo cages, moss-covered and decaying, arranged in a circle. In the center stood a new cage, freshly woven with bright red bamboo, still wet with sap. I didn't see Mai, but as I turned to leave, each cage leaned toward me, and a voice echoed in my mind, "One debt remains. No one leaves." Than Phong Prison had been abandoned for nearly 40 years. It sat isolated on a barren hill in central Vietnam, surrounded by little more than wind, rock, and the chirping of insects tearing through the night. Once, it was a special detention facility built for prisoners who would not confess. People without charges, without records, locked away until there was nothing left in them to extract. I'm a documentary filmmaker. When I heard about this prison, I knew I had to film there. We were granted permission to shoot for 3 days with only one restriction: do not enter cell number 9. The former caretaker said bluntly, "It's been sealed. Don't open it. If you see the door move, look away." I thought it was a joke, but when we arrived, everyone in the crew felt something off. Not just the dampness or decay, but the absolute absence of birdsong. No echoes followed our footsteps through the halls. The stone walls were thick, green with mold, covered in rusting barbed wire, and still something felt like it was watching us from inside the walls. The first day went smoothly, but at night, as we set up tents inside the main hall, the sounds began. Not wind. Tapping on iron bars. Soft, rhythmic, like someone locked up long ago, still waiting to be let out. I grabbed my flashlight and walked the corridor. When I reached cell number 9, the door, which had been visibly welded shut in the morning, was slightly ajar. The handle bore scorch marks, like it had been touched by fire. I didn't go in, but I peered through the gap. Inside, nothing. Just a concrete bed, and scratched into the far wall, as if with fingernails. I didn't talk, but they still took it. That night, the entire crew barely slept. The next morning, our cameraman said he'd dreamt of a man with no face, hands bound behind his back, standing in the middle of cell number 9. The man nodded slowly, then walked into the wall. I brushed it off and kept shooting. But when reviewing the footage from the night before, I found a clip none of us had recorded. A shot from high above cell 9, like a ceiling cam, looking down at someone sitting in the corner, hunched over, clutching their head and gently rocking. I fast-forwarded. The figure slowly turned toward the camera. Its face was pale, eyeless, mouthless. There was only a single dark hole in the middle of the face. I deleted the clip immediately, but that night I dreamed of that room again. Each time the figure inside came closer. By the third night, I saw myself strapped to the concrete bed. A camera stared down from the ceiling. A cold voice echoed, "You didn't speak the truth, so we kept it." I screamed. No one heard. The next morning, the crew packed up and left. I didn't go. I couldn't. Something tethered me to cell number 9. I stayed one more night, alone. I set up a camera facing the cell, then fell asleep without realizing it. When I woke up, the camera was off. The cell door stood wide open. In the center of the room sat a chair, and on it, my camera. The footage inside showed the final recording. As I fast-forwarded, I saw myself walking into the cell. From beneath the clip's static, a whisper slithered into my ears. Cell 9 doesn't hold people. It holds their words.